I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at iCrossing, and I'm delighted to be here on the French Riviera with the ARF.
Hi, I'm Srishti Gupta with IRI, and I'm here at Cannes with the ARF.
Hi, Gayle Fuguitt, President, CEO of the Advertising Research Foundation. It is officially day one and unofficially day three here at Cannes, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Anne Bologna, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at iCrossing, and Srishti Gupta, who flew in the middle of the night, who's the President of IRI's media, all the media solutions, right? And what a thrill to be with two absolutely incredible leaders. Both of you have had varied experiences across advertisers, big data, creative, ad agencies, and so it's going to be really fun to kind of unpack all the issues. So let's start with you, and you've talked about the consumer as the disruptor.
Yes.
And C2B instead of B2C.
Yes.
So say a little bit about that, the role of the consumer, how we get to the consumer, and then we're just going to kind of riff between how do we connect the consumer to creative today, and then what about measurement, right? How are we going to get connected to measurement and kind of go back and forth? So, but kick it off with the consumer as the disruptor.
C2B. Well, the thing is, for those of us that have been around for a little while, since the 80s and 90s, as a strategist, we've been talking about the consumer being in control. Well, it hasn't been until the internet scaled in 2000 that we have a generation of people, a generation of consumers who actually finally have the tools and the technology to literally be in control. So it is a consumer to business economy. There is no more
marketers
of business.
aren't in control anymore.
No, they really, really aren't.
Game over.
I mean, think about your own behavior. Actually, it starts with search. If I want something, what do? I'm in the driver's seat. This phone is basically the joystick of my desires.
How does television fit into that?
Well, that is a fantastic question. I mean, television absolutely has a role. You look at the numbers, and television, the numbers of hours that people are still watching television, they are watching. But the experience of ads has gotten so much worse. There's an average of, I don't know what the number is, in the US, it's like 9 to 12 ads in a pod. They all just blur. So if you're going to use a media, it goes back to one of the old adages about communication is use the media well, and now it's use that moment well. Use that contextual moment for when I want something, serve me what is useful and or entertaining and or engaging in that moment, because otherwise I'm going to tune you out. I mean, literally tune you off.
Ad block, right?
Yeah.
Straight to the hand.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Srishti, you're doing real-time measurement, and how does that fit in? Real-time measurement. How do you take this world where the consumer is the disruptor and literally the consumer is saying, you're operating on my terms, not your terms. How do you measure that behavior? And you have this new product, IRI Lift. What's new under the sun? Because we are under the sun.
Absolutely. So, as Anne said, right, so the consumer is in control, and she brought up context, right? It has to be the right content and the right context, right? Both of those things have to come together. And that creates a very interesting dynamic to be able to optimize much, much faster. But that cannot be done if the measurement doesn't exist. So if we cannot really point to each one of those pods and say, what did that do to drive sales in the store or actual consumer behavior, then it's all for nothing. So that is where we have been focused a lot, and you mentioned IRL Lift, on taking that context and content together, but then being able to optimize it in real time and make those decisions much, much faster.
So that all sounds like that's great at the big picture level, but let's just have a little nerd fest here, right? It's early morning, but let's go deep. Okay,
we can do a nerd fest
any
time of day. There's no time.
R-rated for research.
Absolutely.
All right, where are you getting the data? What scale is it at? Are we still talking about samples and sample projections? There's a lot of concern about that. What are the data sources, and how do you know that they're actually predicting consumer behavior, because the consumer's in control? So go down deep into how you're doing that today. So what's changed, right? Since I was in research for 32 years at General Mills, what's new under the sun today?
Absolutely. So I think that the biggest change, and we've been talking about big data for such a long time, right? The biggest change is the move from from sample to census or near census, right, as much as possible. And so from a data perspective, when we talk about purchase data, it's no longer about saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to get 100,000 households here, 200,000 households here. It literally is about getting millions of households.
How many
right?
million?
60 plus million
60 million households.
And purchase data at the most granular level, right? Each and every UPC that is bought every single week.
Yeah.
And not just that, then marrying that to what's happening in the store. So why did I buy it? Was it because something was on display? Was there a special promotion? Was there an end cap that really got me excited and got me there?
Well, that's in store, but you know, we're in this world of e-commerce right now, so how are you actually connecting screen behavior and media consumption? That's why I really wanted to get you two together.
Yeah.
Anne's background is, you know, a lot in advertising, right?
Yeah.
And so how are you connecting the screen behavior and what consumers are watching and where that, like, kind of, so we don't do that last click attribution.
Exactly. So
What's
those
your secret sauce for that?
So those 60 million households then connected to set-top box data, right? From our partners, Rentrack, ComScore, and marrying that to everything that's happening from a digital path to purchase perspective. So each and every click, right? Each and every impression that they saw. And marrying those data sets, that leads to a true attribution. So to your point, not just last click, but really saying, I want to be able to give search the right credit in online video as well as display ads, right? And television. All of that into one integrated platform.
So Anne, you jumped off from, you know, you were with an advertiser, you were with TripAdvisor, right?
Yep.
You were at ad agencies, Fallon, I mean, preeminent, bleeding edge agencies at the time, and now you're at iCrossing. So why don't you riff a little bit on what Srishti just said, because you're also taking big data and connecting consumer behavior and connecting dots, so to speak.
Well, I was saying,
how are you doing that?
Off camera before we started, that one of the things that we've introduced since being at iCrossing is this notion of every brand having its a brand OS, an operating system, because in this complex world, you can't just it isn't just as simple as coming up with a big idea and then applying it across some channels.
Yeah.
It really starts with our brand OS. If you use the metaphor of an operating system, the hardware is the data, and we say to our clients, you've got to have the right data in the right place to do the right thing, which I want to get back to you on actually. I have a question for you. But it starts with the data, which is the hardware. The software is strategy and the imagination, the insights, and what you do with all of that data and the insights. The user interface is activation, how you go to market, and then optimization is any good operating system is always upgraded constantly. Sort of this notion of a living, breathing thing, an operating system for each brand. So that's one of the first things we launched when I got to iCrossing, and helping clients get their data house in order is really job one. So one of my questions for you was, what advice do you have for clients in leveraging data? What should they do? What should they be doing to do that? Because it's so foundational.
Yeah. A lot of our clients, as an example, have very, very rich CRM data that is really not being utilized anywhere, right?
Yes.
I almost feel like data still, we talk about big data, but it still lives in its silos of, this is media data, this is purchase data, this is my, CRM data as an example. Right, and if I have an e-commerce business, this is my e-commerce business, my e-commerce data. So I will spend all my energy optimizing that shopping cart, but I'm not looking at what it is doing for all of those other touch points, right? And so our advice always for clients is those data sets have to speak to each other. They have to link. The strategy has to be a holistic data strategy. It cannot be in those particular silos.
Right.
So let's talk about creative. Right.
Yes.
Let's shift gears, because it's one thing to talk about all the counting. Let's skip the count and go over to the creative. And really, literally, the way that you get the consumer's heart to beat faster.
Absolutely.
Right? Who's creating great creative? I like to say that creative is kryptonite to ad blocking. Someone said to me, kryptonite's bad, right, Gayle? I'm like, I know. We want to block ad blocking, right? We want consumers to be able to be entertained and excited and delighted. What's your favorite advertising right now?
Wow, that's a good question. I should have thought about that, since I don't have anything off the top of my head.
Favorite commercial?
favorite commercial?
ad you've seen?
You know,
We're at Cannes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for me,
A client maybe that's up for winning.
For me, it's not so much about ad, but the content. So the REI Opt Outside that they did last year, I think that was just fascinating, right? Because it was right on brand. It was so much about actually creating excitement around stepping outdoors and what they did with their employees and all of the goodwill that generated around that time. I'm really a big fan of what they're doing, as an example.
Okay. How about a prediction? What do you think the future? You've described an exciting present, right? That a lot of people maybe aren't aware of. But what do you think the future is going to look like in marketing, advertising, and analytics? Are job titles going to keep changing?
Yeah.
Where do you think these areas are headed? Are they going to come together better? Are we going to continue to be concerned about silos?
You know, I'm going to go back to your question. I'm going to connect the two questions you just asked about creative and advertising and what's the future. What I get excited about is being able to leverage the digital technology to enhance my life, to make my life simpler and better. The metaphor I use is, and I think the future of marketing is to be able to build experiences that feel more like digital and omni-channel experiences that feel more like going to an Apple store than the DMV. Because right now, too many digital and mobile experiences feel like going to the Department of Motor Vehicles as opposed to walking into an amazing experience. I think that's the future of creativity, can you imagine adding...
Are marketers going to create that? Are ad agencies going to create that? Where is that creativity going to come from?
Well, and that's another theme for the future is I think we have to reach epic levels of collaboration. Right now, the way people collaborate is too siloed. Clients have their ecosystem of agencies.
Your advice to advertisers, right?
Yes.
Collaborate more.
Collaborate.
To answer the question you asked, Srishti.
Exactly. Collaborate in new ways.
Teams.
I mean, I think
different ways of operating.
Yes, I think
Absolutely.
orchestration and systems thinking is the new strategy. You cannot get to singular answers. Linearly.
What is systems thinking?
Systems thinking, it's funny. I've read up on that recently because it started in the 50s, and the notion of it is that if you bring in disparate points of view, diverse points of view, you actually crack a problem open and you solve it in a way that you could not otherwise have solved it. And so I think that is how we have to operate as an industry. It is with a purpose, because it isn't just a think tank, as you know, is basically thought leadership, which is good, but we're problem solvers as an industry, and I think we have to go about solving problems in completely different ways.
Okay, so your personal success. What would you say is the key to your personal success? What skills, characteristics, experiences?
You know, I think in today's date,
school of hard knocks, school, you know.
In today's date, it is not hard to find information on anything. Exactly, right? It's not hard to find information on anything. It's as long as you're curious, you can find it. So I think what truly creates long-term success, whether that is for organizations, brands,
No, your personal success.
My personal success?
It's a personal question.
Okay.
Personally, what's made you successful?
I think
you're incredibly successful. You clearly have a lot of stamina. You landed in Canada at 2 a.m. You look like $1 million.
She looks way too good to have gotten 2 hours of sleep. It's just unfair.
I think
so you can start with that part if you want to. We're just going that a little while, and then your personal success. People want to hear that. They want to know. You know, they look at you and say, "Oh my goodness, that is someone who is leading a huge, for a huge global, very successful organization, is leading a group. You're a female executive who has ascended. You were educated in India. What is the key to your success?"
I think it's change. I think I'm not afraid to change. I've been in many different environments.
How do you get yourself to do that? A lot of people get stuck.
Yeah,
right?
you know, it is
I mean, it's
unnerving,
hard.
right? It is unnerving.
unnerving, that's a really good word for it.
You know, and I've done that throughout my career. Actually, even when I was growing up, you know, moved a lot, changed a lot of schools, and I'm not afraid to, like, you know, put myself out there a bit. So I've been on the advertiser side, I've been on the agency side, and for example,
How did you make those decisions when to dive out? That's the question I get asked the most often by millennials
Yeah.
because I'm really focused myself on lifting up the next generation.
Yeah.
And they want to know, when should I change jobs? How do I know when I should change jobs? That's their number one question.
Yeah, yeah, I have always followed.
You both, between the two of you,
Yeah,
we got about
and-
20 here. So.
Yeah, you know, I would say that I've always followed where I think the industry is going, right? Where the growth is going to be,
Interesting.
even for my own career, right? If I believe that personalization and data is going to be the key, then that's where I want to bet.
Interesting.
And
Oh,
I don't know,
that's
what
interesting.
would you?
My path is a little different. I actually am a product of what you've heard and read before too, which is follow your passion.
Right.
I fell into advertising. It was a hand in glove fit. I fell into
Did
Fallon.
you go straight out of school?
No, I was a television news reporter right out of school,
Okay.
and I had my own business
Major
early.
in journalism? Or
Yep. Yep.
At Wisconsin, right?
Exactly. And someone told me I should get
Go
into
Badgers.
advertising.
I just wanted to. You're not wearing red. I just wanted to toss that in.
Cheesehead. Cheesehead for sure. Green Bay, Wisconsin for me. But no, I felt, someone told me I should look into advertising, and I didn't have any interest in it. And then I met some people, and I felt a kindred spirit, and I just absolutely hand in glove. I'm one of those people that work never felt like work. It still doesn't. It feels like recreation. It's just fun. And I've always, like you, I have reinvented myself probably every 7 years, actually, as I look back. It wasn't, I didn't plan it that way, but it's because.
Did you get itchy feet, or?
I think it was
like,
because
where did that-
change
Were
is.
you looking at the future and saying, "Ooh, I got to get over to that new
No,
thing"?
I leaned into what I was interested in. It was always
It was
just
more personal
I was an
endeavor.
like for instance in the agency
It was
world, I
your
was an
path to purchase, right?
right. It was my path to purchase,
Path
exactly.
to success.
But I also have always felt that my best work is ahead of me. I've never felt like I've achieved or accomplished
wonderful.
anything.
That's
I
a
love
great
that.
That's my whole. That's just my nature, and I think that probably serves a person well. Is just never rest on your laurels. And I mean, I'm at a I've been at iCrossing now for a year, after a 30-year career, and I've been around some wonderful, famous work, and I've worked with some amazing people. But I feel like I'm just starting in the business, and I actually think the industry, I think the marketing industry is at ground zero. I think we literally will look back on this 20 years from now and go, wow, or no, 100 years from now.
Yeah.
And we'll say, oh my goodness, that we won't even recognize where we are right now, because we're an industry in between lives.
Fascinating. I
Marketing
love
is at
that.
ground zero right now. And that's what's exciting to me, is because we can all help shape the future of an entire industry. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So, any failures along the way? And how do you deal with it?
Well, yes, there always are. There are, there are ideas, projects that didn't work. But I think for me, failing fast has always been good. As hard as it is to, acknowledge that, I think the one thing I do is to acknowledge
It really
fast.
fits with your perspective on finding what the next thing is going to be. By definition, if you're in the next thing, you're willing to fail fast because the next thing isn't as well defined or
Defined at that
articulated,
point.
right?
Yeah.
Or informed, or it's not a system yet.
Yeah.
How about you? Any failures
Yeah.
along the way, and how do you cope with that?
Of
I mean,
course.
how?
Somebody told me once that I don't have a rearview mirror. And
yeah.
I think that's probably
That's
true.
good.
I
Yeah.
never, other
You do,
people
it's the
acknowledge
fast
things
forward.
about you that you don't know, and you go,
Yeah,
"Oh, really? That's kind of true."
Yeah.
I just look forward, and I think pivoting, and I think it's the old adage
Yeah.
again. How it's not that you fail; it's what you do
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
something isn't working.
Yeah.
And to me, there are levels of so-called failure. There's programs that you created for a client that aren't working. Well, pivot. We'll figure out, dig into what's not
Yeah.
working and fix it. There's a personal failure, whether it was you didn't handle a situation well. You found that you could be a better leader. People told you that you need to be more personal. You need to stop being so hard on people. Whatever. You get feedback, and so it's what you do with it. And I
Right.
guess it's really about growing. Never stop growing. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's one of my inner mantras is just never stop growing.
So that's really beautiful. So I want to mesh these two areas together. I think it's an interesting way to mesh them together. You're two very successful female leaders. We talked about the best advertising out there and creative and the role of creative. Let's talk about women and minorities, diversity, and how they're being portrayed in the media today.
Oh, don't get me
what
started.
What will it take? Well, I'm gonna just like quick, but
Yeah.
and what is it gonna take, to get an even playing field?
Yeah.
Share your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, it starts with I've never liked the fact that, I love the advertising business for reasons that have to do with its creativity and it's about business and it's about making things happen. But I've never liked how advertising has always stereotyped people. It has always done that. And if you look at some of the campaigns and some of the things that have done really well in this social digital world where authenticity is, look at the videos that go viral. Exploding a watermelon. Why are millions of people watching that? Because it's just, humans are messy and gritty.
It's like comedy.
And
it's funny because it's real.
Well, but it's
so
also just
to.
real. We're humans and we're drawn to excessive amounts of humanity. And so I love, that is the other thing I love about the future of marketing, is because with the digital world, it's like all this stuff gets unplugged. And so, women and diversity, I think that we are in a place right now, both because of the millennial generation and Generation Z after them. I think they will have grown up in a much more transparent world where you can't hide under the
colorblind,
artifice.
Do you think, or not?
Well, I think so. I think so. I really do.
It's an aspirational thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually very, very optimistic.
You are optimistic about that.
Because I go back to what Anne said. As more and more content is, consumer generated, consumer driven, right? It has to then mirror what the society looks like increasingly. So, and I see my kids, they are colorblind, and I cannot but imagine that, when they grow up and their friends, the messages that will truly resonate is what they see around them.
Right.
So I'm actually really, really optimistic about it.
It's almost like the digital world has allowed us to take the veneer off of, the filter off of what the world looks like.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to think about it.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful advertisement that won our Grand Ogilvy Award this year. That's for Lean Cuisine. I don't know if you've seen it, where there's a giant scale in a place that looks like an old bank, almost looks like Grand Central Station, and women are invited, and they're like, "You want me to step on the scale, right?" And women of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah, right.
And then instead, it tells their stories about accomplishments. It was created by 360i using social media.
Yeah.
And then they put their accomplishments on the scale and weigh their accomplishments.
That's right. I did see that.
It's
Yeah.
really,
Inspiring.
it's very powerful.
Really powerful.
So it reminds me of this conversation that
Right.
we were talking about as being aspirational.
Well, and I have to tell you,
redefining, right?
Men hate being stereotyped too. Men are like, why do I have to look like the guy? Why do they make me act like the guy in the beer commercial?
Yeah.
I'm not like that.
Yeah. I really like your point, Ann, about being real. Like my favorite, because you and I go way, way, way back on General Mills. My favorite was creative for Hamburger Helper, and I was just very passionate, which is a kind of a euphemism for how I really felt about the fact that the dad in a Hamburger Helper commercial did not have an aluminum briefcase, the kind that might have handcuffs on it, and was not walking around a huge pool in the backyard to get into the kitchen with a shirt and tie on saying, "Hi, what's for dinner?" Right?
Yeah.
It was just not, it was miscast, and it was, and that's what you're kind of saying about even just the creative shoots and who are these people and casting, and these are very important decisions for ad agencies these days.
Right.
So maybe they'll be able to mesh this like this. You're peeling the layer off of digital and
the one thing we haven't
reinvent.
The one thing we haven't talked about, which I think is really important, is I think we have to add much more emotion. We talked about humanity.
Yes.
We have to add much more emotion to the digital world.
How do you want to do that?
Well, I think it comes through. There's utility that delights.
Yes.
Listen to people talk about Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
They love the fact when you're a busy
Yes.
person with 3 children or whatever it is, that is a lifesaver. So there's utility can delight and it spark emotion, but that's where ideas and connecting and having a message with some
unlocking
heart.
consumers talking to each other, right?
It is, exactly, and
their
facilitating,
language, using their language instead of marketing,
And give me something share-worthy.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
All right, so we all know there have been this terminology, big data and walled gardens, right? The ecosystem. What's the one word for the future that you both envision? Fearlessly looking forward. I have a personal call to action for fearless leaders. I, have been a fearless leader. I intend to continue to be a fearless leader. What's the one word that you think will lead us optimistically and intelligently into the future?
I think it's about completely immersive experience.
Immersion, yeah.
I think, and
immersive
whether that
experiences.
Yeah, whether that
I'll give
is,
you two.
I have two. Sorry.
Well, it's only fair. She had to.
Makes sense.
Well, similarly, it's about seamless experiences.
Seamless experiences.
I always say
love that.
consumers don't
Immersion.
operate in silos.
You can
Companies do.
Seamless immersion. Maybe.
Seamless immersion. But then the other word I have to use because I
That's
really
three,
think it's
Anne.
true.
Yeah.
Seamless experiences is one. And the other one is innovation.
Okay.
I really think we have to
Okay,
innovate.
that's excellent. Let's grow our brands. Let's get back to
I
brand
think
growth,
we
right?
have to innovate.
Yeah, we unlocked $31 billion that needs to be put into advertising to unlock brand growth.
Yeah.
All right, so you all heard it here first. Anne Bologna, Srishti Gupta. It's so great to hear from both of you.
Yes.
Optimistically facing forward on the beach of Cannes on day
Beautiful
1 or
day.
3, depending on how you look at it. And somewhere in the middle of the night for you, I think, right now. But, it's really been a pleasure to spend time with you, and thank you so very much.
Thank you, Gayle.
Thanks.
And thank you
Thanks,
for being a
Gayle.
champion of all things forward.
Thank you.